Welcome.
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 Welcome to Startup Central Victoria.
This is an exciting and collaborative journey.
Creating and growing businesses in the region.
Together we can learn to work and support each other.
We look forward to hearing more about your business ideas.
And thank you for your commitment to our region.
This is a wonderful, exciting time for businesses. We know you've been through a lot and we're really looking forward to working together with you as a region.
And finally, can I say that entrepreneurial spirit and commitment leads to transformational change. What a great thing. Thank you.
So hello everyone, I'm Kerry Anderson from Startup Centre Victoria, and we are very grateful to the support of the Digital Innovation Festival and La Trobe University's Innovation and Entrepreneurship team for today's event. I would like to start by acknowledging and extending my appreciation for the traditional owners of the land. We are meeting on Yorta Yorta, Dja Dja Wurrung and Taungurung country, and some of you are even further afield. Today, we have a fantastic conversation lined up for you on the topic of emerging tech platforms. Very timely, as we're about to do a study on maximising our digital capacity in Central Victoria. So please take the time to chat with Brad Davies from Vector Consulting if he knocks on your door, or maybe you'll get so excited after today's talk you would like to meet with him. Just let me know. For those of you that haven't heard Steve Sammartino speak before, you are in for a treat. Not only does he wear really cool shoes, socks today, Steve is a futurist and co-presenter of the Rebound, which he was busy filming yesterday. He lives and breathes tech. Can't wait to share it with you, I'm sure. But he's going to be joined by two very special panelists representing businesses here in the region. Stef Cola works in the enterprise software space with Clear Dynamics. She is passionate about promoting women in STEAM and a strong supporter of ongoing education in Bendigo. Marcus Turnbull is owner of Turncode Productions, a boutique website design and software development company based here in Bendigo. You can usually find him at Possumworks, which is a really cool co-working space if you're in Bendigo sometimes. Go check it out. So thank you, Steve, Steph and Marcus for sharing your time with us today. As you think of questions to our audience, please type them into the Q&A box and our panelists will answer them. But I'm going to hand over to you now, Steve.
Thank you so much, Kerry. Everyone can hear me. Just give me a thumbs up. You know what I've become good at, everyone? Staring at green dots over the last 2 years. I mean, and the temptation is to look at your own face, but you've got to look at the dot so that people know you're looking them in the eye. Now, I do have my chat open, and that means I'm expecting you to say, hi, Steve, in the chat, so I know that you're paying attention. And I'm going to ask you to find some bits and pieces for me around the web, so we'll make it as interactive as we can. Now, I want to talk about two things today, and the two things that I want to talk about are, the first one is the regional renaissance, and it could not have come at a better time than right now in a post-COVID world. So the regional renaissance I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to talk about emerging platforms of Web 3.0, and those things are really going to overlap in an interesting way. But before I do that, I just want to make a confession. And the confession is that I wrote my first lines of computer code when I was 10 years of age. I know Marcus is just nodding his head going, nerd, nerd. I mean, he's just, look at him right there. And a lot of people don't know what that means. See, Marcus and I, we know what that means, and Steph knows what that means too. It means that we might not have had a friend for the first 25 years of our life because we're just nerding it up with code action. Now, the good news is that code's becoming friendlier and more human. Now, remember when talking to the walls used to be for crazy people? Now with your Google Home, your Amazon Alexa, we can all talk to the walls and get an answer back. So we're finally, with semantic language programming, teaching the computers to speak our language. So eventually we'll be able to train our computers in the same way that we train a dog. Now, I want some people to write down what they think the most important technology has been in the last 20 years. Just write a little comment there. I'm really interested to see what people think has been the most impactful technology that they've experienced during the 20 years of this digital revolution. Let's call it 25, since 1995, when we all got on the web around about that time. Yes, I know that the web was around in the 50s and the 60s for 12 people in universities, but what's your favorite piece of tech? Write it down in the comments. I haven't seen any comments there. There we go. Social media applications is one. Okay. A lot of people probably thinking the phone. I want to propose. Here we go. They're all coming through. That it's emojis. You weren't expecting that, were you? Do you remember the first time you saw an emoji? 2 dots and a little side, like the emoticon, the first version, and you put your head on the side and you say, is that a sideways smile? That'll never catch on. Put your favorite emoji here so I can see what your favorite emoji is. Here's mine. There you go. There's the favorite emoji. Look, my mum used to send me that emoji, and one day I rang, I said, Mum, why do you send me the poo emoji? Because it means call me, Steve, call me. She said, is that a poo? I thought it was a chocolate Mr. Whippy ice cream. And so, see, I'm only half joking when I say emojis are the most important tech. What it is the ability for us to communicate and read any language, no matter what language you speak. It's the first ever language we can all understand, no matter what language you speak. And I watched in that video the word collaboration. And that's what this is all about. It's all about, we can have technology, but we always need humans on top, right? Because without the human layer, it doesn't work, right? And so we need that ability to collaborate, right? And so I used to get in trouble for cheating at school, and I'd say to my mum, I wasn't cheating, I was collaborating. See, I was nice and early, right? It's not cheating, it's collaborating. So that's what we've got to do. Now, let me talk about the regional renaissance. So a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. And COVID it's been traumatic. It's been a traumatic experience for people around the globe. And for me, it was traumatic because the way I earn my living has been speaking in large rooms filled with people. Now, how well do you think my business went during COVID? Just have a little guess. How well? That's why I pivoted and did the TV show, The Rebound. We're back on air in April, as Kerry mentioned. So, and you know what I did? I took my old product and I just put it in a new place. It's the oldest trick in the business book. Take this product and just put it in a different distribution system. So I took the ideas that I would share on stage and just formatted it and put it on screen. A little bit more than that, but pretty much that's the idea. Pretty simple stuff. Now, the thing with COVID is that people have the most open minds that they've had in maybe a century, maybe since World War II. Because when you are forced to change, you have creativity. Now, that means that we're going to have a whole lot of what I call forks and accelerations. And if you were thinking strategically about your business and in your region, how you would develop things during this regional renaissance, you could do a lot worse than the idea of forks and acceleration. So what things have forked and will never change? Things have really forked up. That's what I'm saying, right? Like, so what things have forked, have gone in a different realm that will never be the same. And then what things have accelerated? Trends that were bubbling along, but now they've accelerated in a way that they're happening more quickly. So that's a really simple framework for us to use in our business, forks, accelerations. So I'll give you a couple of examples. An example of a fork is that after 9/11, we used to test people for the weapons outside their bodies at an airport. Now at an airport, you got to hold up your code because we're testing you for the weapons inside your body, right? So you need to check in where you go and prove your vaccination status. So we've got this biometric reading is now going to become a new normal. That's a fork in the road. An acceleration, and this is the one that relates to the regional renaissance. An acceleration is the idea of the work from anywhere movement. Now, that was happening. It was bubbling along, but all of a sudden, everyone was forced to do it around the world. And we are never going back full time to the cubicle farm. What we're going to have in the future is a hybrid work. And this is so exciting for me because it enables us to have the ability, when we're in digital work, which is a large chunk of work, it's about 50% of work is digital work, which can be done anywhere. But for the first time in history, large corporations are saying, okay, so you want to live in Bendigo or Ballarat or Central Victoria? Well, you can work at the bank and come into the office 2 days a week on the fast train and stay at home 3 days a week. We're not going to go back to 9 to 5, 5 days a week in the office just so that we can get in traffic jams. Who wants? See, that's one thing I don't miss in a post-COVID world is traffic jams. They're gone. So we have this idea, and it's kind of funny because for the first time in human history, this separation with location and labor has occurred. I can summarize the history of human work in 4 words: spear, seed, spanner, silicon. Right? Think about it. Spear, that was mobile work 1.0. You want to eat tomorrow, follow the herd, right? Hunters and gatherers. Seed was when we mastered agriculture and we started to have the first communities. And then the industrial era was centralized into cities with the spanner. And that came at the cost for regional areas. But now that silicon is our major factor of production, again, we can redistribute. It means that we can have more affordable housing, not fight traffic jams, reduce the impact on the environment. And we have this regional renaissance if we lean into it. And because we have silicon, it's not just that we can work from anywhere, we can sell to anywhere. So, just understanding where Marcus works, there's a cafe downstairs. You can roast beans there and sell them across the world and still be regional. So we need this regional mindset, and then the tools of technology bring the world to us. But we don't have to go to the city. We can do it from anywhere. And this is a mindset, right? And we need to get this mindset into everyone's work. I'm a surfer, you can see it up the back, and I tell you, I'd much rather live way down on the coast away from the city than in the city. So this is what we need to do. We need to push people into this area. So we're already seeing it. Guess what? Houses look more like offices. Offices look more like houses. Marcus's space there, he just showed a little visual before. It's all funky and cool. Felt like a house, didn't feel like an office. It's the kind of place you want to hang out in, right? So you're already seeing that soft furnishings, collaborative spaces. Work is when you get on the computer. You can do that anywhere. When you get together, it's about ideas, collaboration, exchange. Now, see, I'm so excited, Kerry. Okay, let's talk about platforms. Now, Web3 is really interesting. If you look through the history of economics, and I'm actually an economist, again, another nerd thing, don't tell anyone, I'm embarrassed, I'm an economist. But here's what we see in business. There's this really interesting pattern where we go through it every couple of decades or generations, where things bundle, unbundle, bundle, unbundle. They aggregate, de-aggregate. You can see it through technology. And Web 3.0 is like this process happening again. So before we get to Web 3.0, let me tell you about Web 1.0. Think 1995 to maybe 2004. In this era, the web was a highly decentralized and fragmented place. So we would go to a website, read and retrieve information. And it was astounding and incredible that we could find information on any topic that we were interested in. But it was really hard for anyone to publish anything. It was hard to find things. You couldn't find people. Maybe they had an email address. They had, surfmaster33 at hotmail.com, and then that went missing. And then you change jobs and get a new one. Like, how could you find people and things? Do you know what? I actually bought a magazine which had interesting websites to visit. A magazine. That was search engine 1.0. You could buy magazines with websites in them, right? That was Web 1.0. We had the dot-com crash, and all of the people from the TV industrial complex said, I told you the web was a fad. It's a fad. That's what they said. Web 2.0 was really about a world when it became easy to create content. For the first time, you didn't have to have high skills to participate in the creation of knowledge. And that's when it all exploded. So we call this the user-generated content era. Social media emerged. It was easy to, apps emerged. But a weird thing kind of happened where the web got really centralized into these powerful big tech companies. And while they gathered data on us to serve us up more relevant content, keep us engaged and keep us coming back, which we did, we really aggregated in. What happened was it kind of developed this, I call it not the internet that we believe in. So, I mean, it became this world where it's surveillance capitalism, right? That's the word for it. Great book if you want to read it by Shoshana Zuboff. It's a lazy 800 words if you haven't got much on tonight. Just read that book. And it talks about how big tech took our information and surveilled us and gave us free addictive products and then bundled it up and sold it to advertisers. And it's not the kind of internet that we thought that was going to be equalized, an internet where anyone can play. And this is where Web3 comes in. It's a decentralization of the internet. And I don't want to go into heavy tech. We can answer any of those questions. And I know Marcus has a lot of skill on that, and so does Steph with the AI. But this is a world where all of a sudden we own our own data again. We can control it and use it. And really, cryptocurrency is really just, I would like to call it a use case, right? Crypto isn't crypto. Crypto is a use case of the blockchain, which is part of Web 3.0. It's much bigger than crypto. And in fact, crypto in some ways is a speculative distraction from the true power that comes out of Web 3.0. Let me give you an example of a world in Web 3.0 that I envision. You go to have a bank loan, right? And when you go to the bank, you've got to fill out 100 different forms with your name and all your details and all your financials. You fill it all out and it takes you forever. You do it with Bank A, and then you do it with Bank B, and then you do it with Bank 3, and you go and beg them for money, right? In a Web3 world, here's what happens. You give them a key to all of your financial data, which is mobile, that you own and control, a cryptographic key. And you put a smart contract into that. And they pay you for the right to look at your data instead of advertising on Facebook for people looking for a new home, because they know with the data you've gone to home, open homes, they know you're in the market, right? They pay you $500 to look at your data. Now, the bank that you do business with and get the best loan, right? Once you buy a house, so they know that you weren't just tricking them to get $500. When you buy a house in a smart contract and the deeds go through, those other banks give you the money, and the bank that wins doesn't have to pay the $500. All of a sudden, it becomes a pleasure and an earning opportunity where the banks bid for your work because we have what I call a data reversal. Right? Who doesn't want to live in that world? I want to live in that world. And if there's anyone in here who works for a bank, I'm sorry for telling the truth, but I'm a truth merchant. That's what I do. So that's an example there. Let me give you another one. Something that's going to come out of Web 3.0 is what we call DAOs, or distributed autonomous organizations. Now, this gives us the potential to do the things that big platforms had historically done. So think Amazon, Airbnb, Uber. Now, I'll give you my example. Uber 2.0. Here's what happens. Uber, of course, they came and disrupted the taxi industry because, to be honest, the taxi industry hadn't innovated. They're a monopoly. They didn't have to. And we get it. We get the convenience of Uber. But here's what's not cool about Uber. They take 30% of every ride. And the people driving the cars, very, very hard to even make a reasonable living. In a Web 3.0 world, we can set up a distributed autonomous organization that no one owns or controls, but all the drivers tune in. 1% of the rides goes into a development pool that keeps the code alive and the servers and does the marketing. And 99% of the revenue from each ride goes to the driver. That's the type of thing that's possible with Web 3.0. Now, there's quite a time between now and when that becomes functional, but that's what all of this Web 3.0 and tokenization and fundraising is happening. And it makes new platforms possible where there's more money to be distributed to people in businesses. We can have DAOs in regional areas and little microcosms of markets, a little bit more like, I don't know, almost like we become digital craftspeople of like the old era where we have communities and we can build community platforms. So that's what I get excited about. One last thing I want to talk about, and I'm 1 minute over, Kerry, but one last idea is the idea of NFTs. Is anyone here guilty of spending a lot of money on a JPEG? That's the question I really want to know. I mean, NFTs, I've got to tell you, I mean, it's a big bubble. I know a guy who owns a Bored Ape that he bought for $2,000 and it's worth $500,000. I said, sell and buy a house. I said, you can't live in your digital ape. You can live in a house anyway. That was just my idea. But NFTs are really interesting because I think where they're going is far more interesting than where they are. So the idea of a non-fungible token, mostly people buying artwork and having a digital representation of something that says it's uniquely theirs is good. But the idea of a smart contract is better. And this is the idea where the physical world and the digital world interchange with each other. It has some overflows into the metaverse, which I think we'll do some questioning on. But the idea of an NFT is good. And my favorite example that I've seen to date is the band The Kings of Leon. And when they launched their last album, they included some NFTs. And these NFTs, if you bought them, you got a vinyl copy of the album. And the NFT gave you rights to go to all of their concerts in the future for free in perpetuity. See, that's a really cool way to create something that's a token, which is unique, but has real value in the physical world. So when we think about NFTs and tokenization, a really nice, fun thing on platforms to get in your mind is how can I make a token that interacts with the physical world and vice versa? Because here's the truth that no one talks about. There is no digital. There is only life. All right. Like right now, I've got bits of paper here and we're talking digital. It's all interchangeable. This idea that they're two separate worlds, that's Internet 1.0, where you go sit on a box and log in and then go back on with your analog life. That's gone. But here's what we have got. We've got this. We've got the tool of all the world's knowledge the day it happens. Average people have superpowers. And if we'll embrace those tools, I promise you, the regional future and our future will be anything but average. Thanks. There we go. There's the opener. I've got to have a rest, a little breather. While I do that and have a little breather, right, and I'm just looking at the thank you, Karen, for the comments. Grant, Kerry, Laura, see, I love that. I'm reading them as we go. Why don't we have a little bit of an introduction from you, Marcus, and you, Steph, on what your businesses are. And then I've got some curiosities here that I just want to tap into your minds on what you guys know. So I've got some, so why don't we do that? And then let's get going on the questions. And of course, any questions that the viewers have, of course, type them down. That's what we're here for. Why don't we start with you, Marcus?
Righto, no worries. I'm unmuted, that's good. Yeah, so I run Possum Works, which is a co-working space, which is, I think, something that's probably going to get more popular as companies get rid of their office space that they've needed in the past. And also software developer, and yep, I was developing code back in my late teens, so yeah, it's quite a while ago. And yeah, it's certainly have those same sort of memories back from, well, Web 1.0 wasn't really there when I first got my first email account, and we started doing pen pal letters via email, which was a bit of a change at first time at school. So yeah, so I've been doing that, and yeah, quite interested in sort of the crypto and all the crypto technology, even though a lot of it even goes over my head. So there's people a lot smarter than me that are developing these things. So yeah.
It's funny, you know, you say, it's a really interesting point that you made there, Marcus, on the crypto stuff and how you said a lot of it goes over your head. I want everyone on this call to embrace that statement. And I'll tell you why. There's this mindset that the technologists know it all and we're just the victims over here who don't know it, and someone else is controlling the strings of the world. And here you are, you know, a developer who works in and out of this stuff all day, every day, and you don't know it all. If there's anything I want everyone to remember, it's this: no one knows it all. Like no one. It's like people say to me, I go to a conference and, you know, some of the screen isn't working or whatever. And they say, oh, can you fix this, Steve? You're a techie. I'm like, I can code you something in PHP if you want, but that's about it. Like, you know, it doesn't mean that I know everything. And so, but on the flip side, we are a few keystrokes away from someone who does. You know, my favorite Google search is find someone who can. You know, how to ... And there's a video, there's a YouTube, there's something, there's a session like this, an event that Kerry's put on for us, a startup Victoria put on, where we can find out a bit more. So it's a really good point, Marcus. Is that, yeah, and just can I just pick up on that with your coding stuff? How often you're going into forums to find out little bits and pieces and just sew it together, right?
Oh, totally.
Tell
Yeah.
everyone a bit about how that works with coding.
Oh, yeah. I mean, totally. Like it. There's a website called Stack Overflow, and it's pretty much as soon as you get stuck, any developer will just go to Stack Overflow and ask the question, like, this is the issue. And it was quite funny last Friday or a couple of weeks ago, Stack Overflow went down. So I was like, oh, well, I'm going home for the day. So that was it.
Remember that? The computer system's down in the office, everyone go home. So
yeah.
Get a pen and paper out.
And interesting, like what you were saying about the cycle of things changing. We've seen that with computer systems. Like first we started with mainframes, then we went to desktops where everyone had their own computer. Then we've gone back to the web where everything's back on the servers again. And with a lot of the development languages now, a lot of things are now back running in the browsers. Like we've got all the client-side frameworks where things are back running on the client machine. So that's been over 30 years. That's sort of gone to and fro.
It is interesting, like the patterns of history become really important. People say, oh, what's the most important technology subject to study? I say history, because patterns come again and again and again. So Stef, why don't you give us a little bit of the Stef Cola almanac of the sort of work you've done and where you are now and what you're doing with Clear Dynamics.
Absolutely. And thanks very much, Steve. What an awesome introduction to the emerging technologies that we're working with today. I love that. So I'm Stef Cola. I'm currently the head of engineering at Clear Dynamics, and I wasn't always the head of engineering. That's definitely not how I started or how I was born. Didn't come out of technology. I definitely fell into this as an industry, and I fell in love with the enablement of it. I think Laura mentioned in the chat there that tech is an enabler, and I found that throughout my whole sorted career. So I started in the education space, creating some products to service the vocational education industry. And I really love the idea of packaging up information and providing it to learners so that they could better their life. I think that's such an integral thing. And it talks to that user-generated content that we're working with in Web 2.0 and lowering those barriers. I was one of the youngest in the office at the time, and so they looked at me and said, "You're young, you know technology." And so I founded the digital department at that organisation, and we went through all range of different technologies that could work and could augment in these education products. So everything from 3D simulations through to applications and online mobile hosted work. So a whole different range of exploration that I got to do in that space, and then moved into the enterprise software industry, where I found exactly the same. It's a bunch of really passionate individuals who don't know everything, who have amazing Google foo, can Google the heck out of a problem and find the solution. And we're all working towards, providing solutions, but using tech as that enabler to do that.
Love that, tech as an enabler. Steph, I just want to pick up one of the things that you said there when people said, oh, you're young, you know about tech and stuff. You know what's interesting? Remember, there's a bit of an old school idea in business. You have a mentor. One of the things I've been espousing the virtues of recently is the reverse mentor. So I did a keynote last week with an industry. It's a little bit more traditional, and it has a lot more senior people. It hasn't got a lot of young people. And I'm like, well, why don't you embrace the idea of the reverse mentor? There might be some young kid in your business or in your life or at your school, wherever in your community, in your football club, and they might be loving the opportunity of the knowledge you've got at a bigger business level, and then they've got some tech, and then together you both know more. So that's a really interesting idea, Steph, that idea of they know you, but you so often just need to flip up how we do things. And that idea of a reverse mentor, I think, is a good one. While we've got you, Steph, we were talking offline before this all started, And you said two words that I loved. And the reason I loved it is because I don't know what it is. I just want to be honest. Right? And this is where, see, I'm meant to know stuff, and here I am just being vulnerable. You talked about the composable enterprise. Do you want to demystify that for me?
Yeah, absolutely. So I see the composable enterprise being the future of organizations, and it really is moving away from these monolithic structures that we've got and into the, like you've mentioned there, those distributed or interchangeable building blocks that really focus on a single business use case and can move away from, you know, Marcus, the legacy systems that we're all fighting with on the technology side that are stuck in mainframe land, by making them small and modular and focused and interchangeable being the primary thing. So it removes that fragility of the monolithic structures.
It's funny because this idea of a big system, it's almost like everything up until a decade or two ago was a factory. Even computer systems were a factory. It's like you build this giant server room and it's in there and it's a factory, and this is how it is, and this is how the wires are. And banking systems still have, you know, the COBOL from 1976 running their whole system. Yeah. And so just that idea of modularity, Steph, do you want to take us a bit more through this idea of what modularity is for business and how people can understand systems and platforms and when things are modular and how they work better? Because I really love that word.
Awesome. So I love modularity. It breaks down things into either specific users. So you can have really user-centered or role-centered modular packaged business components or capabilities. You can have, you know, specific functions. So you might think about that as plugging in your accounting function. They might have different software or technology, but it's all rounded. And the most important thing with all of our modular systems is their orchestration and the interoperability. So it's no use having a bunch of little systems that don't talk to each other, but if you can have an app mesh where you can have that interoperability come into play, then you can modularize your system. And instead of having, you know, one line technology that handles everything from the beginning of the user journey through to the server experience, you can actually pick off those little parts and break them down into much more user-centric and interoperable parts there.
Such a great summary. And I just want to call out Laura Carty, who just made the comment of the year, which was, I'm convinced that most people run their organizations on Excel spreadsheets. Oh my God.
But which version of the Excel spreadsheet's the most important?
Exactly. Remember that too pre-cloud to be like, are you in V1 or V1.11 or V2.1111? Oh, that's the wrong one. Send me the latest one. I mean, didn't Google Sheets fix that? It's the idea of the browser versus the desktop again. Just on that idea of modularity, that was such a great summary there. And I love how you talked about role and users and some of those words. And again, this is where what we need to do in business when we think about systems with tech is in our minds, make this referral back to things we already know and understand. So you go into the local pub, right? And different users have different outputs or drinks that they order from the same system, which is the bar, or different food that they get from the restaurant. That idea of modularity, it's all around us. And so you need to think about how it's interoperable to serve different users' needs with the same system. And so just sometimes, and I try and do this all the time, I'm looking for that analog link or that analogy of things that I already understand to help myself understand the new technology as it emerges. So when you have your eyes wide open to the world, you go, oh, now I understand that tech thing. It's like this, but it's a digital version of that. That's such a great summary, Steph. I appreciate that. Now, Marcus, we're going to talk a little bit about the practical blockchain. Blockchain's a tricky one, isn't it? Because often people say, can you explain blockchain simply? I don't know that it's easy to explain simply. So I'll give you the option here. Choose your own adventure, Marcus, on a use case of the blockchain outside of crypto. And I do want to get into crypto or you know, help people understand it.
Yeah, no worries. There's sort of, I mean, in terms of understanding it, there's sort of two components to what makes it work. And this will you know, over time, like people are still developing the solutions with this sort of thing. But one is the cryptography, which is encrypting the data so that, you know, it can't be seen unless you've got the key, which is what you were talking about before. But then the other thing is the chaining of the data. So and that keeps the data integrity. So people can't go and mess with the data. So that's what, you know, that's what blockchain is essentially, is this chain of data, which if anyone tries to go and mess with earlier transactions, it invalidates the whole thing. So that's sort of how it works. In terms of an example, like one thing I read about a while ago was a thing called Beef Ledger, which is, Beef Ledger. So they're doing it up at Queensland University of Technology, I think. So that's essentially like a token, like one cow is a token. And so they can now track, I'm just making up how it would work, but, you know, moving from paddock to paddock is essentially the same as moving a Bitcoin from one wallet to another. So you can track the whole history of where this cow has been. It then goes to an abattoir and gets split into little bits, and you can track, you know, the trucks that they went on and all that sort of thing. So, you know, down the track, you might be able to go to your supermarket or your butcher, scan a code that's on the meat that you're buying, and it's like, oh, this was in the paddock down the road and it got chopped up at the abattoir and that sort of thing. So that's sort of one of the uses that blockchain can be used for. So yeah.
Steph, you just made me laugh again. That's very funny stuff, not to be confused with. And
Health ledger.
Yeah, I mean, you know, an interesting one there. We had some good comments from Rick and Laura as well. Rick did a really interesting and good one, which is the verification of news. And it's one of the ones that I've thought about a little bit, is with deep fakes getting so good. Look, I'm not really here. This is just code, right? This is fake Steve. Real Steve's just watching Netflix, chilling out on the couch, right? Deep fakes are getting so good that, and everyone's seen some really good deep fakes where it's like, oh my God, that is Tom Cruise or that's Obama. You know, the idea that if a video was taken and it was tagged and it was put on the blockchain at that moment, you're like, did that happen or not? You know, news verification. Again, I don't know the mechanics of how we'd work, but Rick, that is such a great and an important one, right? We're in the middle of a war right now, you know, in Russia. What was really said, what really happened. I mean, this is one of the things that surprised me, is that the internet, I guess it's like any powerful tool, it can be misused as well as it can be used. It became a disinformation. You know, I remember thinking so naively that, oh, the internet, this will be the end of lying. Like, it's like anyone can check. Oh, well, let's just go to the internet and check, right? And then we all got a bit surprised, right? But it's funny that tech finds the leaks, you know, it finds the gaps, and first a problem happens and then you find a solution and then someone finds a way to hack that. And it's a little bit like this bundling and unbundling. It's just a game that just keeps on going, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely right. And I don't know if it's because I've been on the internet since it started, but, you know, I'm very... I don't believe anything I see on the internet, basically.
Well, it's like anything in life, right? It's like you've got to be agnostic.
Yeah.
I mean, it becomes important to say, well, where did you get it from? Becomes a really important thing. And then you say, well, is there 3 or 4 other sources which verify this, and are they equal? It becomes like the idea that you would go on the web and just find it, and because Google puts it up the top, that must be right. I mean, we need to get that out of kids' heads, right? Because Google can be gamed just as well as anything else can because of the algorithms, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. And also mainstream media. Like, I don't know if we go down this path, but the term that's mainstream media. That's to basically invalidate mainstream media. So yeah, whereas that should be who we're listening to anyway.
Yeah, it's a very tricky space. What are some of your thoughts on the information on the web and getting information that's valid and true? What are your thoughts, Steph?
I think that a lot of it comes back to, I'm with Marcus, I don't believe a lot of what I read and a lot of what I hear, but that comes back to critical thought and being able to apply the fundamentals to this, teaching that as a skill base, a foundational skill base on using the internet and, you know, navigating through life as we become more decentralized and digital nomads. I think that's going to be one of the foundational skills that we can apply to, you know, you mentioned our kids, but I think everyone who's using the internet, so not just kids, adults as well, being able to go, like you said, was this from a credible source? Has it been cited somewhere else? All those sorts of things that we invoke when we're questioning something can come into play a lot of the time. And, you know, I do see the ability for algorithms and tech enablement to assist in that, to go, you know, this has been cited here, here, and here, or you know, the alternate has been cited here, here, and here. So the validity of this, or the confidence in this, can be put at an algorithm level. But at the end of the day, that's a foundational skill that we should be building in everyone that's using the internet and working together.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a discussion with my kids the other day. I'm like, just because it's on the internet doesn't mean you should believe it. This idea of critical thought, yeah, it was almost like we got a bit lazy for a few years there. And maybe because in the early days, many of the things on the web, other than the IRC chats and stuff, it came from reputable sources, your government and media, and it wasn't quite manipulated then. But then when the tools got handed to anyone, you know, as I sound like an autocratic leader from, don't hand the tools. But, you know, again, that critical thought, it goes to show that digitization on its own isn't enough. There always needs to be that human layer on top of it. Steph, you guys work with a bit of AI. So what are some of the stuff that you do within that context?
So we work very much around AI enabling operating systems, but with a focus in the enterprise land. So part of that has been around augmenting the developer experience. There's a lot of, you mentioned humanizing the technology that we're working with and training that technology. We leverage that when we're building. So building out the platform that has the intelligence to suggest what patterns we could be using that could automate or augment our end users' systems so that they become easier to use, they come together quicker, they're leveraging patterns that we've tested from security and usability standpoint. So it's leveraging a lot of the stuff. But what we find, and what I've found probably more applicable across the board, is AI and machine learning has been leveraged and is best utilized on the incremental improvements across a broad set of data that would be uneconomical to focus human thought on it. So we've found our biggest uplift when not looking at a single use case, but looking at our data across every single bit of our enterprise and how it operates, and improving that 1%. And because that is in every single area, we're getting that benefit of that efficiency. Whereas if we had have done all of that work for, you know, just that 1% incremental improvement over here, it wouldn't be an optimized use around learning.
It's a really good one there, and I'll ask you something in a minute too, Marcus, on AI. You know, this constant fear that comes with AI is going to take over, and, you know, the robots are going to get us and we're going to have to, you know, eat dog food and, you know, live underground and whatever. It's kind of interesting because, like you say, it requires big data sets to be able to develop insight. It's a deep kind of learning. It's not, and we use the word deep learning, it's not thin and horizontal. I get this feeling that organic learning is very, very different to, we call it in nerd circles, wet code and dry code. So anything that's an organic being, like, you know, a tree or a human or a cat or a dog, is wet code, and data is dry code. But there's an interesting website called Is This a Cat? And Is This a Cat is an AI engine where you put up a picture, and if you put up a picture, it'll tell you whether or not it's a cat. And I've done experiments with it where you draw a picture of a cat, and I'm not the greatest drawer in the world, and you put it up and it generally says no. And the reason is that engine is based on Google search engine of metadata of tagging cats. And so its inference of what a cat is a picture of a cat with a digital camera, as opposed to what the shape of a cat is. But you can show a 3-year-old kid once a cat and then show them a hand-drawn picture of a cat and they'll know it's a cat. And that's because the way AI learns and the way humans and wet code learn are really different. And it's important that we're not scared of it and understand it's a little bit like an airplane. An airplane can go faster and longer and better than any bird, but it can't go in and under a lemon tree like a sparrow can. They're just different. Anyway, I don't know why I said that, but I just thought it was interesting. So, Marcus, what are your thoughts on AI and the fear of AI? Let's just debunk this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm I don't know that I'm scared of it as such, but
well, people are.
Yeah, and I guess that's the fear of unknown. Like, you know, like what I'm looking forward to in my later years of life is self-driving vehicles. Like, I can't wait to get a self-driving car. It's gonna be awesome. And yet there will be people who are like, no, I'm never letting the car drive for me. But our roads will actually be 100% safer. So
yeah, and I think it's funny. I've you know, the self-drive car is one that's been touted for quite a while, and I think that in the cities, you know, it's a little bit more complex, as you know, because things are more changeable and it's hard for the data sets to learn. But the idea, and this is one of the things that I think is part of the regional renaissance, is this idea of autonomous transport. You got to think about, you know, the idea that, you know, you could set up in Bendigo the world's best rolling office. That's what we should do with PossumWorks. Get a rolling office that goes into Melbourne for meetings, where it's set up and it's a funky little office and it's all just autonomous. You know, and you could even have little sleeper beds and everything coming back. I mean, this is what happens with technology. It removes the tyranny of distance. You know, it could be that instead of flying to Mildura or somewhere that's a 3 or 4 hour trip, it's actually, rather than going to the airport, it's more efficient to actually go in a car that you can sleep in while you're going there, because you don't have to drive to the airport, wait an hour to board, hop on the plane, half an hour. It could be more efficient in those kind of sub 2, 3 hour, 4 hour trips. So, you know, that's a classic example.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the metaverse. I'm interested in the metaverse. For me, it's a real curious one. I've got to be honest, I don't buy it. I don't buy that it's going to work for Facebook or now Meta, the company. I guess there's a couple of components to it. We've got augmented reality and virtual reality. And I think too often those two things get put together where they're not exactly the same thing. They're a little bit different. And I think there's use cases for both. I think virtual reality is really good for gaming and, you know, planning of, you know, putting on goggles and looking through a building before it's built and industrial contexts. But I don't feel like we're going to go and live in a metaverse for sheer really, really long time, unless we have what we call an NND, which is a no noticeable difference, which then brings us to simulation theory. And maybe we're in a simulation now, who knows? So
the Matrix.
We're in it right now.
Yeah.
Straight in. So who wants to start here on the metaverse? Why don't you, Marcus, because we spoke about this before on the phone today. Why don't you give us some of your thoughts on Facebook's metaverse and where you think that's going to go? And Steph, you get the chance to think about it while Marcus has it.
I mean, yeah, for me, augmented reality is probably more of something that'd be a benefit. And, you know, we saw it a while ago with the Google glasses that came out. You know, things like that where, I mean, one example is like I'm really bad with people's names, and if, you know, I was wearing these augmented reality glasses and I run into you in the street and it pops up and says, "Oh, that's Steve." Oh, that's right, that's his name. So that's that sort of thing would be great. You know, I think Facebook, if, you know, with the augmented reality, they'll be using it to give us advertisements on every, you know, brick wall that we walk past, and you know, things like you walk past the shop and it's like 30% discount in here, you know, bing bing arrows. And I mean, you're talking, you know, 20, 50 years down the track, there'll be implants. Like people have optical implants, and, you know, the Apple earbud things, there'll be probably implants in your ear, you know, be able to get that sort of stuff. Our kids or kids, that'll be just normal for them, I think.
I buy into the idea of neural implants and technology implants more than I buy into the idea of us putting on clunky goggles and going into the metaverse, which sounds ironic because one's more extreme than the other. I just don't see the utility of going into a metaverse that isn't quite as functional. But I love this idea of augmenting our brains with external things. And in many ways, if you think about the tech devices, they're getting smaller and smaller and closer to our bodies, and the AirPods now just sits in your ear, right? So they're essentially, I mean, it's almost like if there was a visual path and timeline, you can see where it's going, right?
Yeah.
Do you just really quickly, we just want to demystify augmented reality versus virtual reality, just like the way you define the differences between those? I think that's really important. And then we'll get
Okay, so virtual reality is where you put on a headset and you can't see your surroundings, and you're seeing a virtual world. So yeah, it's really good for gaming. And we had one here at Possumworks a few years ago, and there was this game where you climbed up, you went up a lift and then had to walk out a plank, and you felt like you were
Feels real.
20 stories up, and my wife did it, and she was like crawling along the ground because she was scared she was going to fall off the plank. So
It does feel real. It definitely feels real.
oh yeah, you get the vertigo. Whereas augmented reality is you're still seeing everything, you're still seeing the real world, and you just have goggles or something that give you a bit of an overlay where you can see additional information. So you know, they can be used for games too. Like there's been games where you're in your lounge room and zombies will jump out from behind the doors and things like that, and you can shoot them. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that virtual reality might be good. You know, in the future, you might be able to, your favorite footballer or sports star, you might be able to run the 100-meter race with, like, if they're wearing, imagine, you know, real-time contact lenses, and you get to see what they see, or you get to see what it's like on the football field. You know, that stuff like that could be really cool, but it's quite a way off. Steph, what are some of your thoughts? And why don't we just tap into the business side of it? Because you're an expert in SMEs and digitization. What are your thoughts on augmented reality and virtual reality and some of those use cases?
Well, I like Marcus's use case around the augmented reality popping up, just like we've got in our little left-hand corner, our name. I'm all about that. When we're returning to the office, Marcus, I will invest in those glasses to be able to reflect, you know, this Marcus, this is what emailed me last, that little digital helper that we've gotten so used to working in this interface, and bringing that augmentation to the workforce. I would be all about that.
It's funny, you know, even on Zoom now, a couple of times I've had, like, you know, we've all had those Brady Bunch, big, giant Zooms, and you're like, you've only met the person for the first time. You're like, Billy, you're good one, Mary, and you're just sliding across to see what their names are. And, like, it's cool because you want to respect the person and understand and lean into that. And so often before meetings, I mean, I knew what you look like, Steph, because we connected on LinkedIn, right? And so, like, as soon as it's like, hey, Steph. But, like, you do that before you have a meeting. You're on your phone, you're going, oh, here's what they look like on LinkedIn. They work there. Cool. You kind of do that, right? And so if you just remove that barrier, it becomes useful. But I think this idea of the digital twin is another good one, where essentially you will have these twins of things, like twins of a building, right? Yep. Digital twins, it's a really great one if people want to look that up, because I think that's going to be something that's important to a lot of businesses. Your house will have a digital twin where you can see everything, how it's all operating, and make adjustments to things when you're not there. And if you change something physical, the twin updates, and you can change something on the twin and it updates the physical version. We already have that for mines and factories and warehouses, and that'll find its way. You'll have a digital twin for your car and your house and all of that kind of stuff. So I think there's a lot of those applications that, you know, just give us control and usage and being able to oversee things.
And it's the virtualization or the ability to view the data. Like, essentially, you can look at that in a 2D format and you can go, oh, yeah, well, my house looks like this, and elements. But when you can augment that into an area that brings that to life. And you talked about this a little bit earlier, Steve, where, you know, technology only really matters when it has an interaction with the real world. And that augmentation is currently some of the best technology that we've got, that is literally connecting our digital data with the real world. It's overlaying it on top of it. So I think that is one of the technologies that's going to continue to thrive when we find the different use cases that drive or accelerate that technology enablement that we talked about.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm really bullish on augmented reality and digital twins. I mean, for me, far bigger than the idea of the metaverse and Mark Zuckerberg's, you know, version of that. I mean, it's a really interesting one there, and Marcus and I spoke about this earlier with Mark Zuckerberg. The one of the things that we all know and why Facebook and social media platforms work so well is, you know, we're such needy humans. We love to see people like our stuff, but it builds FOMO because it has this link to the physical world. You want to show people how, you know, great your coffee and your breakfast was, or you're in this amazing place with a view, or here's where you went, or it's your birthday and you want to feel special. And I think going into this virtual world, even though they talk about scarcity in the virtual sense, it doesn't have that true scarcity and that FOMO and those things. And I just feel like there's not as much reason to go in there, whereas Facebook has always had this inextricable link with the physicality. And I think that, you know, one of the things that we need to think about is digital and physical not separate. Physicality, digital, or even that idea of just augmenting what we do, right? That's what software is here to do, to augment humanity, right? Augmented reality is, I guess, a deeper layer of a use case, but just this idea of how we augmenting physical reality with digital, you know, that's kind of the thing that I always come back to. Otherwise, like, what's it for? Do you know what I mean? I mean, we're doing this because we all couldn't get in the same place, right? This isn't, we would all rather be in a room like drinking beers and, you know, breathing on each other's faces, COVID style, but we're doing what we can, right? We're you know, making up the gaps of what's not possible, and we're augmenting the possibilities where we can, you know?
Yeah.
So if you got any sort of, if you were to give people tuning in about digital platforms and Web 3.0, and I'll give you some time to think about it while I give my views on what that would be. If you're thinking about platforms and the regional renaissance, for me, I'll start off. I'll just talk about the regional renaissance. For me, this idea is that I think that regional areas can have everything that the city's got, but things that the cities can never have. That's my overriding insight. There's things that just cities just can't have, but we can have it all in regional areas. And when I say this, I've got a farm that I'm building a house on, I'm moving to out past Geelong. So, you know, I practice what I preach here, right? Space. Karen has said, you know, space. And space is just this wonderful thing that you just can't get in a city. And cities have their benefit, but we can go in there Friday nights to the footy or whatever real easy. It's not that hard. We jump on the train or sleep on the autonomous car. So that's the thing that I like to think about. And one of the things I like to think about with the work from anywhere revolution is, you know, offshore work gets a bad name, but I just want to say two things about offshore work. My first web startup, I had a bunch of people work for me in Moldova who were cheaper per hour. But if I didn't have access to them, I couldn't have employed the 10 people that I employed a year later locally. That's the first thing. The second thing is we can think about doing a job in New York now and getting paid in US dollars that wasn't possible before COVID. That's a flip. Like Australia is the low-cost labor market to the UK and the US. Just that thought alone is an interesting thought. And when it comes to Web3, I feel like we're quite a way off, but I would tell people think beyond crypto and just watch some videos. Web.3, go to YouTube, just watch a few videos in the morning when you have your coffee. 10 minutes a day, at the end of the year, you're in the top 1% of knowledge on that topic because most people don't do it. Right? We can't make it any easier than watching a video, having a coffee. So they're my thoughts on that. What are your thoughts, Steph?
Oh, I think in the immediate term, there are some, and Simeon's put that in the chat there, there's some inequalities in the rural areas in terms of the connectivity and the ability to access that tech enablers that we've been talking about. I think short to medium term, that's going to be solved. And we need to continue operating and embracing those technologies with the knowledge that that will be available. There are different technologies that are coming in to fill those gaps. So understanding the connectivity and assuming that much like any of the other accelerators that are happening, is going to be solved out. Embracing that technology and with that critical thought that we talked about earlier. So taking those micro steps towards understanding, like you've mentioned there, Steve, a little coffee and a YouTube or coffee and a video. It's the best way to be leveling up. It's incrementally, and it can be building on those foundational skills that you've got and you're bringing into that space. So I'd love to see that continue to be considering. And one of the other things that we mentioned that I think is such an important thing to think about as you apply new technology systems is, what is the current system doing that is in the physical world and in the digital world, and what could that be augmented with in terms of these platforms that we're talking about? So understanding the modularization that's already in your businesses or in your lives and how you can be leveraging those technologies to improve or automate it.
What about you, Marcus?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing as you, like with the crypto and all that sort of thing, and blockchain and everything. Yeah, it's not there yet. It's going to be a number of years before it's, you know, in our everyday life. And you know, a bit like social media platforms of past, like Bitcoin was the sort of first thing that's around, but it won't be the last, and it probably won't be the biggest by the end. Everyone, well, I don't know if anyone remembers MySpace, but you know, that was the first social media platform really, but that's not around anymore and things like that. So that's what brought it into reality and into everyone's, into everyday life. But yeah, there'll be newer things coming along which will actually take it to that next level where it's usable for everyone. So.
Yeah. Well, Rick remembers MySpace, so do I. I mean, but yeah, this is the thing that happens too, is that it's easy to panic in the short term when a new era arrives in tech, but the job of the technologist is to make it accessible so that everyone can do it. And that was the classic example of Web 1 to Web 2. And so I think with this Web 3, it's got a big UX kind of problem to solve so that it becomes easy to understand and use. But again, we'll get there for sure. And Rick did use an old school emoji, as Steph pointed out. He actually did. He kicked that old school. I love a bit of old school action.
You got to turn sideways to see it though.
Thanks, Rick. That was awesome. So I think we're sort of done on time. Is that right, Kerry? Because I can just keep going. Let me tell you, we're just warming up here.
I think unless there's any last minute hot questions someone wants to type in, that you've done very well. And I have to thank you all for putting it in terms that even I can understand. The difficulty with small to medium business owners across Central Victoria or anywhere in the world is we think we don't understand technology and we forget how much we use it and how far we've come. And it's always very useful when I walk into a business, they say, oh no, we don't understand tech. And I say, well, look how you've changed your point of sale system and how you communicate with your customers. All these little steps have been adding to our knowledge, but we definitely need the help of experts like Stef and Marcus when we do need to take that deep dive and get there. But I never knew there was a Web 2, let alone a Web 3. So I have been educated today, and it has been lovely listening to all of you talk. Thank you so much. And just a reminder for anyone that is in the early tech stages, we do have some, of course, we're called Startup Central Victoria, as well as those scaling up their businesses. We have another workshop coming up Wednesday, the 16th of March, Tech Issues for Early Founders. So it's a clinical workshop being conducted by YouSpark, and that will be really practical help for those that just don't know how to find the right people to look after them and what are the questions they should be asking. And hopefully to say, yes, tech is there, it's good, let's embrace it, let's use it and grow our businesses. So thank you, everyone. And thank you to Lauren behind the scenes, as always, looking after us. And it was wonderful to see all the participation online as well with the comments. I think you answered all our questions because you jumped in and told us what we didn't know already. So thank you, everyone. Till next time.
Thanks, Kerry.
Thanks, Kerry.